Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 44 of the Cross Media Show. Today's topic, we're going to be taking that red pill and diving in to the Matrix Resurrection review. Before we get into our discussion, we got a little bit of housekeeping to do. If you're listening on your favorite podcast service, feel free to give us a good rating on that platform. It helps the algorithm and helps us grow our audience. If you're watching this on YouTube, consider dropping a like and sub, and don't forget to hit the bell to get notifications for all our, like the Penultimate Game Show, the Marvel Mondays Initiative, and my show, Anime Nation. If you're watching on Twitch and have Amazon Prime, you have Prime Gaming, which means you get one free sub to give out. We'd love if you gave it to us, but if not, that's quite alright. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan, one of the many hosts on the channel, and I'm joined by some wonderful guests today to talk all things Matrix. First off, we got 1/3 of the movie podcast, Remember the Film, and half of the podcast, I'm So Tired, Italy's biggest Matrix fan, Hugo. How's it going, Hugo?
I'm doing great. Very excited to talk about this movie again. So, yeah.
All right. Our next guest has been on before, someone who's very into Cobra Kai, and of course the Matrix. It's Saj. How you doing, Saj?
I'm doing well, Ryan. Thanks for asking. I'm looking forward to the next hour or so.
All right. And last but certainly not least, 1/5 of Point in Progress, the man, the myth, the legend, Mario Rivera. How's it going, Mario?
I'm doing well. I hope the blue pill or the red pill can help me survive COVID. I currently have COVID during this time, but I'm still willing to be here. So it's going to be great.
All right. Okay. Hopefully some of that Dayquil. We've got some light stream and podcast updates to get for you, and we can dive right in.
There we go.
Ruben finally did it. He updated this month's schedule, so it's on the website. We'll be doing it weekly to be sure you see all the content we're doing throughout the year. That'll be at thepenultimateconquest.com/stream. We're officially back next week fully, starting off with the Marvel Mondays Initiative, finally talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. Feel free to drop your thoughts on the film to our SpeakPipe at www.speakpipe.com/penconquest. And now for it. Time to get into the big topic of the day, the Matrix. Time to jack in, talk about the Matrix. Let's do this. So first off, my first question is going to be, what's everyone's history with the Matrix? Hugo, what's your history of this franchise?
Okay. That's a loaded question. I could go on for that for 20 minutes, but I won't. So, The Matrix was one of the first movies that I saw. I remember my dad buying the DVDs for me of the whole trilogy and showing it to me when I was way too young. Like I think I was 9 years old when I first saw these three movies, which is not, I don't know if it's the right age, but it was a time in my life my parents had just split up, and my dad just sort of showed me a bunch of movies that maybe I shouldn't have been watching. Like I've watched a bunch of Tarantino movies and The Matrix and other stuff like that were not appropriate for my age, but hey, it is what it is. So it's kind of been living with me for ever since then. So I watched it. I didn't watch them in theaters because I was a little too young for that, but I watched them around 2006, 2007. And since then, I basically went on a roller coaster where The Matrix, the first one, has always been one of, if not my favorite movie. And I initially loved the sequels as much as the first one, and then I went through a teenage phase where I was like, oh, the sequels are stupid, there's too much talking and philosophy and that sort of stuff, and then I kind of circled back to really loving them again, which is where I'm at now, for entirely different reasons, because as a kid I was like, oh, cool explosion, and now I'm like, oh, they're sitting down talking about philosophy for 20 minutes, and that's kind of what I do just in my life generally, because I'm a student. I'm a political science and philosophy student, so I'm very interested in that. So I love these movies so much, and I don't want to spoil my thoughts on the next one, but I could just say I'm very positive.
All right. Staj, what about you? What's your history with the Matrix franchise?
It's pretty similar to Hugo's, actually. I grew up watching like Indian films with my parents. I didn't really watch American films. And then that movie came out when I was 9, and ever since then I've been watching. I watched them all three of them in theaters. Uh, I don't even know how many times I've watched the first one. It's kind of probably embarrassing. So we'll yeah, and then also with with the philosophy and stuff like that, like Hugo was talking about, I really got addicted to that aspect of it when I was a little bit older, and I mean, I still watch them a lot. I'm 32 now, so all of college I watched it, and yeah, it's a special. The first one especially has a special place in my heart.
All right, all right. What about you, Mario? What's your history with the Matrix franchise?
Matrix franchise to me was probably one of the first films that I ever saw on the DVD format. I remember specifically my father getting this new player and being to see the special features and see behind the scenes and seeing the Wachowskis and the people behind the scenes creating all these iconic fight scenes and different techniques that they would use during this movie. So watching the movie as a whole and being just kind of blown away by the combination of it being a science fiction film mixed in with the martial arts, which this is roughly the time where I'm sort of getting into Dragon Ball Z. And so the anime aspects of it are kind of built in there too. And to see it all, in my mind, it works no matter what. It wasn't until years later revisiting to be like how perfect I think the first movie is and how it is able to present these ideas as well as add in philosophy and stuff like that, and in combining it with nerd technology in terms of technology with computers. My mind never went there. It was always the funny, punchy, kicky stuff. It wasn't until much later when I got to appreciate that. Going into like the sequels, I think the sequels are probably my least favorite out of the bunch when I'm talking about obviously Reloaded and Revolutions. The idea was so cool, and I remember being so excited for a multi-release film that was happening in the same year of itself, if I'm not mistaken. Reloaded happens, and then there's literally a trailer for the next one that's like a couple months later. And that was like the coolest thing to be a part of growing up. But I remember after watching the movie that I didn't really want to watch them ever again. So never had the affinity for Reloaded and for Revolutions. So when Resurrections was coming around, I was sort of kind of in the pit of my stomach of like, am I actually a fan of these movies? Do I just love the first film? Was very curious of how I was going into it, and when we get into it, I'm very, very happy to talk about that.
All right, all right. I'm just gonna give it my quick history. That's quite similar to Hugo's actually. Watched The Matrix at way too young of an age. My dad showed it to me at a young age. I remember watching on DVD as well. One of the first DVDs I remember watching. And one moment to me it will always stick out though with The Matrix and with everything because I love the sequels to it. I think it was really neat. I remember it was sophomore year of high school, English honors English, and the teacher were doing the analogy of the cave. So Matrix, of course, perfect for that. And he asked, "Has anyone in this class seen the Matrix?" And I was the only kid to raise my hand. I was like, "Really? No one else in this whole room has seen the Matrix." And I got bonus points because I saw the Matrix. So I always hold the Matrix
Beautiful.
in a high regard because of that. Give me a few extra points in the class. All right.
That's amazing. But also, why did nobody see The Matrix? What was going on with those kids?
Who knows? They were
Maybe they were too young.
uncultured.
Yeah.
This is the time where they're still like talking about their boy bands and their rap stars because comic book movies still haven't taken over at this point and been like the apex of cinema and everybody's talking about them. So
Yeah,
No,
I think
probably.
I think we were at like Iron Man 2 at the time.
no,
Oh.
wait, for Matrix?
Nah.
When he was in high school
When I was
talking
in
about
high
this.
school,
talking
yeah,
about
when he was in high
okay.
school.
Got
yeah,
it,
it'd be
got
like
it.
Iron Man 2 would have been like the movie out.
Oh, so that's
So-
like 2000, what, not 9? No,
I don't know.
because I know the first one's in that.
They came out in like
2008.
6.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on.
Wait, didn't Iron Man come out in 2008? The first one.
That's correct. That is correct.
So it would have to be like what 2009, maybe a little bit earlier.
2010.
Yeah.
So about 2003 is when the Revolutions came out. So yeah, that was a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then, and none of those people had seen The Matrix after all that time. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What a sad life.
Yeah. They didn't get the thrill of Neo and Trinity just going into the main area and shooting everybody.
One of the best motorcycle chase scenes of all time.
Oh yeah, just highway scenes. Yeah, I love that highway scene.
All right, we've gone for the history. Now I want the initial thoughts with the opening of this movie. Because a lot of criticism this movie's getting is, especially with the opening of it in the first arc of it, it's just a little bit too meta. It's a little bit too on the nose. I personally really enjoyed that aspect of it, or something I thought was the kind of just right jab in the throat that this movie needed, and the point she was trying to get across with it. Hugo, what do you think about that?
Real quick, are we talking
All right, Mo.
the point by when there's a turn, or
I'm
just
talking about from when it's him working on the game to where Morpheus comes out and is like, "Hey, this is real. There is an attack in your office building at the moment."
Yeah. It's pretty much the first like 45 to 50 minutes of the movie is essentially all set in this new version of the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
It's pure nostalgia too. Like they keep on bringing it back to things from the first and second movies, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Look, I think there's no way to make a Matrix movie in 2021 that isn't something as crazy as this is. I think the first movie is sort of lightning in a bottle and just can't be replicated just because of the significance that it had on so many levels. Just bringing a concept as anime and weird to mainstream cinema, while also sort of revolutionizing the way cinema is made in the action genre anyway. With actors training to make all those choreographies and then the groundbreaking special effects and all that. To me, as a fan of the Wachowskis in general, I pretty much love everything that they've made. I think creating something so meta and that comments on sort of nostalgia as a weapon, as it is often used in many movies today, and comments on the creative process itself, comments on the corporate culture behind the fact that a Matrix 4 even has to exist, is, for me, a stroke of genius. Like, the first 50 minutes of this movie are 10 out of 10. I loved it. As soon as while I was watching it, I was like, this is exactly everything that I could possibly want for a Matrix sequel, because I don't think there's a way to make a straight action movie in the Matrix universe that is worth much today. So I loved it. I understand it's not for everyone. It's very, very Kojima, and I love Kojima, so I loved all of it.
I definitely have to agree with that. It is very Kojima, down to just him making a game called that they went the whole route with that to such a degree is amazing.
My favorite tweet out of all the Matrix discourse was, I would also try to kill myself if I won a game award. And that was perfect. That was perfection.
I'm surprised Jeff Keighley didn't slither his way into that scene.
Yeah, I mean, he made it into Death Stranding. I was surprised he wasn't a background character in there somewhere.
We got someone else though, which is really cool.
Who's that?
We got Donald Mustard from Epic Games is prominent in one of the scenes.
I didn't know that.
Which, of course, if you've played the extended Matrix demo from Epic Games in the Coalition, that's what's a cool tie-in.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But yeah, he's one of the right before the meeting of him meeting Morpheus, he's like one of the interns that walks up, like, "Hey, what's up?" And I recognized him immediately from the Game Awards.
No way! I'll have to
so I was like, "Donald Mustard's in this? What's happening?" Yeah.
Yeah, there are several like levels to the meta as well. Like if you understand the casting choices and stuff like that, like Chad Stahelski playing Chad, Tiffany, Trinity's husband in this is another little thing that if you don't know who he is, he's just some douchey guy. But if you do know, it's Chad Stahelski, director of John Wick and stunt double to Neo in the Matrix, there's that extra level that works for people who are really tuned into this kind of stuff.
And
but I don't know. How did you guys feel about all that stuff?
Yeah, Mario, what did you think? We'll go with you next.
Very, very similar feelings. I mean, I at first I had that hype when I watched the original trailer. I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go to the theater to see it. And I was hearing, completely 50% of like, either you love it or you hate it. And I was like, oh, I don't feel as much, willingness to go to the theater. So I, of course, watched it on HBO Max, like a lot of people have. And from the jump, I was like, okay, cool. We are going back to the original Matrix in some aspects. Then from there, the way that they were twisting and turning it around and literally like having the rooms be upside down in a lot of fun ways. Once we started getting that this was going to be another one of those spiritual reboot movies that we've been getting a lot lately this year, or not this year, but this like last several years. Whether it being The Force Awakens, or it could be even the Halloween movie in some aspects where it's a sequel, but it's also a return to it. And that's when I was starting. I was like, oh no, I hope it's not like one of those. And luckily it's not. It's not exactly like one of those. It's taking what you already know and turning it on its head and then allowing you to re-experience back into the Matrix in the same way that your character is, Neo, the character is, which I was very thankful for. Because I love how much there is an emphasis on the other two movies, but there's totally 100% solo influence, really focused on the first one specifically. And that made me start to love it because it was a much smaller story in comparison to the grander themes of the sequels that I wasn't that necessarily a fan of. So for it to be as singular as about these two people specifically, being about Neo and Trinity and their relationship, which for me has always been a through line. I know for a lot of people barely forgot there was a romance in the movie. So when they got back to that and back to what I thought what the Matrix was actually about, I ended up having a great time all the way through, including after the turn that I feel like a lot of people turn off on the movie.
All right. And last Sans, what did you think about this opening bit?
Yeah, so in the specific, like the beginning of the movie, I loved it. I loved how they went back to as many like really quick shots of the first movie, and then they just to remind you, what they're trying to get across at the specific moment. I thought it was great. I love that they did the beginning modal as just the opening of the first Matrix. It was just so nice and awesome to see that right when you start the movie, you start to feel right at home. And yeah, and every single time they flash back on something, it kind of gave you that exciting feeling that something's gonna go down right now that's gonna totally remind us of what the first one was like. You two both did also say that the second and third movie weren't so much in it. I was hoping for a little bit more of those, but it was still fun. They did what they went to do, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
I like the nod with how they brought in two in certain aspects. There's a big one. We'll talk later, but I liked it. Apparently, people don't enjoy that particular character showing back up. But
I mean, the second movie is actually my favorite, so I was like, I wanted a little bit more of it, but I understand.
It's also, I do think, as it does. I mean, structurally, it does certainly follow the first movie more. It is the one that worked best for most people, and it kind of makes sense that it would sort of like, because if a sequel were to be made today only according to what the studio execs would want, it would be pretty much A Force Awakens. And this is following that structure, kind of, but it's also kind of commenting on what it means for that structure to be the thing that we do 20 years later. And I do think that it is interesting that narratively it is very much a sequel to 2 and 3. Like, it's not ignoring them in any way. Every question that you might have, when Neo wakes, I'm going ahead, but when Neo wakes up from the Matrix here and he says, oh, then everything I did in Revolutions, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And they explain, no, it did matter. It just changed the world in a certain way.
Yeah, specifically, he was just like, I basically sacrificed myself for things just to happen the way exactly they were. So yeah, totally, dude.
And I enjoy that aspect of it as well. I think it works both as a sequel and as this crazy meta commentary on the idea of nostalgia and sequels.
I
Yeah.
definitely have to agree with that one. My next big question for us is thoughts on the remake characters themselves. So the big ones are Smith and Morpheus. What do we think about the changes to them as these new programs, new things? They still kind of keep some of their old personalities, but they also have slightly different ones. So Hugo, I want to start off you. What did you think of some of the remake characters?
With Morpheus, I was expecting it. As you know, if you've been very tuned into the Matrix, you know that canonically, technically, in the Matrix Online, Morpheus's character dies, and the Wachowskis have always said the Matrix Online is canon. So I was like, okay, then it makes sense to me, at least, that Lawrence Fishburne isn't in this, even though it sucks not to see him, obviously, because I love him. And I really enjoyed Yahya Abdul-Mateen. I think he's amazing. I think the quirkiness that he brings to the character was fantastic. In terms of Smith, I think the role they give him is very interesting because he was always the villain. He was always the foil to Neo's hero. But in the movie, they put them together both at the beginning and at the end. At the beginning, they're kind of co-workers. They don't really like each other too much, but they've built a working relationship. And I think that's interesting. And he kind of represents the business side of the operation. In this case, it would be Deus Machina, which is the name of their developer. I think it's kind of sad that they couldn't make it work with Hugo Weaving. That was the one part of the movie that I was like, oh man, having Hugo Weaving in this would have been that extra bit of brilliance that I would have wanted from it. But I think Jonathan Groff is fantastic. There's also something to be said about the Wachowskis casting gay men as mustache-twirling villains, which is not something that they get to do in movies very often. They cast against type, which I like. I think he did a great. His role in the movie is kind of secondary, really, but because the movie is very much about the relationship between Neo and Trinity. But I like what they did with him.
I'll get into the part of that when we get to our next part, but I definitely have some things to say about his use in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Mario, what about you? What did you think of the remake of these two characters?
Very much in the same way where I knew going in that Morpheus, the main character, apparently died on the Matrix Online games. So I never thought that I would actually see that character in the original form that we know him as.
Mm-hmm.
To see this version be a sort of sentient creation of both, sort of like the personality of Morpheus and also of Smith, I found fascinating. And I thought that would be the reason how we would get another Smith, but there just seems to be another Smith. So that's the only part of the story I find the convolutedness of that character embodying both characters while there also being another one. I wish that was probably more clear in the actual story. But overall, I mean, I'm happy that there is a representation of Morpheus in this for Neo to carry through his journey because there seems to be always needs to be certain elements. But I also like that it introduced in the later half of the story, which was after he's awakened, and you see the aftermath of the world, and that there's these programs that are trying to live in our world that are leaving, electively leaving the Matrix as well. And this is how they're able to be portrayed, which is this sort of new life form in a lot of ways, sort of like transitioning, which I found fascinating. And that to me was the aspects that I drew in more for those characters. When it comes to Smith in general, I love Jonathan Groff. I love them since I've seen him in Hamilton and Frozen and stuff like that. But specifically, I think I like their approach of the character of like him being the boss and him having to dictate that Warner Brothers needs a sequel and they're going to do it without us regardless. Him being able to deliver that message, I thought was a lot of fun. And him being the antagonist protagonist because he's the boss, that was a lot of fun elements. I just don't know where that character is going to go. And I'm okay with that because it is setting up, I guess, I assume future stories for this world, and that's okay. But I do love their temporary alliance in the later half of the film. I thought that was fun.
All right, so what about you? What did you think of the Rebane characters?
To be honest, I still don't really know what to think. That was probably one of the things about the movie I didn't like so much, is not being able to see our old portrayals of Smith and Morpheus. But at the same time, like, I get what they're trying to do. For Keanu to be the one, he has certain catalysts that have to, some stuff has to happen for him to become the one, right? So there needs to be a Morpheus, there needs to be a Smith, because those are all part of his journey to get there. And I appreciate what they try to do with that, and how they portrayed that. Let's see, but for as far as as Smith goes, by himself, that version, I do like his quirkiness. The original, you can never replace the original. It's just so iconic. But trying to step into his shoes, it was good though. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much how much I felt about them.
The reversal of him using Tom versus Anderson in the later half of the film, just to twist them differently.
Definitely great. For me, I am also I really like these characters, remake characters. I also knew we were probably not going to see original Morpheus because of lore reasons, so expecting that. But I thought the portrayal of him was amazing, and the one I am actually sad about is Agent Smith, because I thought Jonathan Graff did an amazing job playing him. I wish he just had a bit more to the story of it all. I understood why he didn't. I understood the story they were telling. Hopefully in later movies we get to see him, because it felt like there was a part just missing of him in that last shot when they're in the coffee shop and that stuff. That he was supposed to have a little bit more to do there, and he just didn't. But overall, I thought they did fantastic. Shout out to the suits Morpheus was wearing. Some high fashion there.
Come on. Like, every other scene he had the most amazing outfit. Like,
that bright orange suit he's in, just murking people. Great.
Dude, the yellow one in the bathroom,
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Like, and just to put a pin on that, I feel like the one of my favorite things about Morpheus in this is that Neo creates this program that he thinks is just, I'm just messing around in this old version of my game, but really he's almost subconsciously trying to create a program that will eventually free him again from the Matrix. Mm-hmm. Like, it's almost as if part of him knows that he's stuck in this again, and maybe if he creates a new Morpheus, that Morpheus might be able to save him, and he eventually does. I just find that very interesting, because it's always about him saving himself. I loved it. It was great.
I have to also get that. Now, there is one more character that really makes up of the new characters that is interesting. I'm going to bring them up in this section as well, but I feel like they are not remake characters. They're just... And that'd be the Analyst, Neil Patrick Harris's character, who I thought was a fantastic villain to pick for the big ringleader of everything playing in the Matrix. I thought he did a really good job in the role. I thought his right amount of quirky sinisterness that he needed. And then just the use of his ability being bullet time to slow everything. You can beat bullet time at stopping time. Fantastic. Thought it was a great ability to give him the counteract Neo. What about you, Hugo? What did you think of the Analyst?
For me, Neil Patrick Harris is used perfectly in this, because he has that sort of douchey, punchable character that he plays really well. He did that in How I Met Your Mother for many years, obviously. But
yes, it is a character he has perfected.
And I think he's also pulling from, I don't know if you guys have seen Gone Girl, but in Gone Girl, he also plays this kind of very controlling, almost creepy character who you can tell he's not physically menacing. He's not, the traditional villain, but there's something sleazy about him that I really enjoyed in this as well. The bullet time stuff was brilliant for me. I know a lot of people have said in this movie that the effects are not as groundbreaking as they were in the first one, and they're not. And I feel like the movie at the beginning just says, "Oh, bullet time, bullet time, bullet time. We have to replicate bullet time." But you can't.
That's
Like,
two words.
you can't really do something as crazy as bullet time anymore. But that moment in the garage where he freezes Neo and he's just walking around and making fun of him, and I don't really know how they did that because it looked really convincing, and it was great.
Yes, I definitely agree. Mario, what about you? What do you think of Neil Patrick Harris's character in this?
I actually thought of him as a remake character, because in my opinion, he's a new version of the Architect, in a lot of ways. Where
I guess that is
I
pretty
think,
true.
but he does mention my predecessor was too,
Yes,
fixated on
equations,
mathematical
yeah.
precision and stuff. But I understand human emotion. That's why I'm so good at this.
Yeah. So in a lot of ways, that to me, he was fulfilling those roles, but in a way that I think that made sense for the movie, in the way that we are so heavily dictated and want to look at our screens and try to be placasent in this world and live in this little bubble. That's what he thrives on, and that's what I love of him being sort of this therapist, this coddling of humanity in a lot of ways, which is a funny, way to think of it. Also, get mental health if you need it. But otherwise, as the sort of architect character of someone who's pulling the strings, he did seem a lot of fun, especially when. But it's interesting. I never thought that I would see that type of character be so directly like attacking our heroes, because you don't see that in the last one. But for him to the way that they led up to this one, I don't know. My cat just decided to join us. Hello, cat.
Deja vu.
Yeah, there we go.
Deja vu.
Oh,
There you
no.
go. Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I did really enjoy his sort of, to me, reinterpretation of what the Architect was in the original trilogy.
All right. And lastly, Stars, what did you think about the Analyst?
Perfect casting in my opinion. Just Neil Patrick Harris always plays a very cocky, arrogant, but like still funny role. And just for whenever he's talking to Neo, he just he has that architect kind of like, this is what this is, and my predecessor doesn't do this, but I do this, and I hated it, and you're interested in the character, and that's that's the best you could do, right? Especially trying to revamp a franchise without a clear enemy until halfway through the movie. So, it was a very interesting character, and I hope if there is a future movies coming, then that he's in it. However they can manage that.
All right. For me, I thought it was again a fantastic casting choice and a fantastic role he was playing, and just a very interesting villain encounter now to Neo that the Architect was, that Agent Smith was in the beginning. What all these movies have always had is that way to counterbalance the one. And through bullet time and knowledge of human emotion and everything, I thought they did a really good job with that. His whole thing of being like, wait, these two are special. We need to keep them alive. Even though, for the safety of the world, for the robots, it probably wasn't the best idea to keep them alive right next to each other, but just far enough apart. I thought that was interesting that they just get to glance at each other while they are in the Matrix and casual pass-bys, but never enough so it affects anything. All of it planned out perfectly. Again, Matrix, I thought it was fantastic with all that. But definitely a character I enjoyed, and if this does bring on sequels or whatever it may be, I hope he is in it and is still a part of the story, because I think he's quite interesting. And now to the next question which I have is, we've talked about the front half of this movie and how we all pretty much enjoyed it. The back half is where people begin to kind of split on this movie. So I'm going to ask, do you think the back half of this movie is good? Does it hold up to that really well done 50 minutes beginning that is just quite enjoyable? And so I'm going to start it off with you, Hugo. What do you think of the back half of this film?
think it's interesting that you say this back half is where people sort of jump off. I feel like I've seen a lot of people be very angry about the meta commentary as well, and just say, "Oh, the movie is telling me that it shouldn't exist," and all that sort of stuff, which isn't, I think, entirely the point of it. But in terms of the back half, I think it surprisingly turns into more of a traditional Matrix movie. It's kind of telling a story. I think the completion of the story is more thematic than it is narrative, as far as why it's interesting to me. Like, the interesting part is the relationship between Neo and Trinity, and why it's so important. It's a story about, it's live action anime about love, really, is what it is. And it's also creating a story where Neo is part of the creator, Lana Wachowski, but then eventually he isn't able to be the one until he meets Trinity, who is the other side of the creator, Lana Wachowski, and essentially is the one in this movie more so than he is. It's, if the first Matrix was kind of a veiled metaphor for, transitioning and the gender dysphoria that the creators were going through at the time, this very much completes that, and I feel like it's almost, as if to say, hey, you weird alt-right people who for some reason have adopted the Matrix and think it's for you, it really isn't. At the end of the day, God is a woman in this movie, and we're going to paint the sky with rainbows, is what they say. So I just kind of loved it for that. The actual mechanics of the story, some of them do get a little clunky, I think, in the back half. We get all the planning, we get Sati being involved, and she doesn't get as big a role as maybe the Oracle would have in another movie. We also get a lot of exposition about IO, which, if you're interested in how, the story of the Matrix lore-wise is continuing, is very fun stuff, because I really enjoyed every part Niobe was in it, just talking about what happened. But if you're maybe not as interested in that stuff, or people who maybe only like the first movie, I understand how that stuff can be a bit boring. But overall, I thought the messaging of the story was really strong, even if sometimes the mechanics could be a little smoother, I guess.
I definitely agree with that. I can definitely see where you're coming from with that one. Mario, what about you? What do you think about the back half of this film when we fully dive into the Matrix?
I think once we got our bearings of like what was going on in terms of like them setting it up as the original Matrix movie, then once we finally are back into what we assume is the real world, I was totally on board to learning what happened at the course of End of Revolutions, which we get so much here, specifically with Niobe and her character and everything that goes on with how the world is, how did the relationship between machines continue on afterwards. Turns out they fought each other. There was their own civil war, and some of them tried to escape, and now there's this sort of new future of both humans and also these sort of
Synthients is what they
yeah,
what they call themselves.
Yeah, and so you get to have this awesome this new world that you exist that did not exist prior because of the cause of the last movies. And I thought that was a solid. My cat keeps trying to reappear on everything here, so I'm gonna just hold on to it. But otherwise, I think that, to me, I found whatever. I thought that was super interesting and solid. And when we get to the point where it's a heist movie at the end, I'm like, yes, this is what I wanted. I wanted a small story. I wanted it to be about Trinity and Neo. You're giving me exactly what I want in terms of that. And to set it up all the way to like visually look like the end of the Matrix, they probably didn't have to go fully that way. But I think that what they were trying to accomplish in the small time space, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think a lot of people have a problem because, I'll say it, the action is almost non-existent in this movie in a lot of ways. There are kicking, there are some fighting, but it's not going to be on any level that I've seen this year. And I know someone made a comment already that Shang-Chi is worse than it was at Cobra Kai or something like that. No, it's this. This is the one that doesn't have the action. So by letting that go and just focusing on the story that they're telling me, that's why I ended up enjoying it as much as I did.
All right. And lastly, Saj, what did you think about the back half?
So yeah, I'm a little like, polarized on it on each side.
Mhm.
Like I loved the stuff in the real what's happening in the real world, right? You get to see Niobe again. You find out about Io. Uh, you find out what happens to Zion and what's changed and what hasn't. And I love that whole, Neo being back in the real world. So I like those whole sections. In the Matrix, not so much. The second half of the movie, it really starts to show that this is a love story. It's more of a love story than. Well, I guess it's always been a love story, but this one just makes it abundantly clear. Hey, they need to be together. Otherwise, he's not going to be the one. And that I think just projected too much earlier in the movie around that time. So I enjoyed all the stuff in the real world, and then not so much in the Matrix. That's pretty much it.
All right. I can definitely. So you weren't a big fan of, like, let's say the ending coffee house scene and the fight, not the mall,
Yeah.
like the abandoned building fight.
Yeah, kind of like in the second half, I just didn't like how much it was just focusing on them being together. It just seems a little bit forced, if that makes any sense. But instead of just kind of, in the first one, obviously he's fighting Smith and dies, and then because of her saying she's in love with him, he gets revitalized as the one. I totally get that, but I don't. It just seemed forced, I guess you could say.
Okay, I can definitely see where you're coming from with this. For me personally, I really like the whole everything we saw in the real world with Io, with Niobe, learning about these programs that wanted out of the Matrix entirely and now use basically magnets and ball bearings to have a physical form in the world, and that's where they live, helping society live together with robot, program, and person. I thought was super cool. I also thought some of the designs of the robots that have uh left the bad robots and joined the good ones were really interesting. Like the giant bird, I thought was a super cool design. I thought that was super interesting.
The one that would end up being Sati, yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was cool. I thought the little like stick insect one was also really neat.
I'm just happy a lot of them didn't talk because I was afraid we're gonna get like Transformer.
Yeah, I was a little worried. I'll admit that. I'm like, don't have a voice. If you're voiced by John Goodman, I'm going to be a little upset at this.
Yo, I'm Trippy Red. I was my cameo. No, for sure. I will say real quick though, the idea that this new Matrix is powered by both of them, and it's so much stronger with both of them in it, or at least them being somewhat close to each other. I found that fascinating. So yeah, when it comes to the end of like the moment where she's holding him and then they're together in that one moment, I was like, it's so cool. She could fly now.
I definitely liked how they kind of went on that direct. They went towards that direction where if Neo wouldn't be the one without Trinity, and then vice versa. So I did like the end where they were together and they flew off together, and it just was the happy ending that Neo and Trinity deserved, have always wanted, and deserved, exactly. So this movie is definitely interesting where it comes to ups and downs about love between the two. So
it's to me the story as a whole is I think there's criticism, and maybe this is what you didn't gravitate towards as much, is that the movie doesn't feel like it has big stakes. Like it's very much, we're freeing Neo from the Matrix, but really, Io is kind of living on its own in peace. We're not currently technically at war with the machines. Like the conflict in the movie is more about oh, the new version of the Matrix is so good that humanity kind of doesn't want to leave it, and the humans that are outside have kind of given up because they've managed to create a peace. They're not fighting anymore. Maybe they've become a bit complacent. That's more the conflict in it, and it becomes this love story because together Neo and Trinity could be the inspiration for it not to be just IO. Maybe the whole world could be more cooperation between the machines and the humans in general. And so the movie is basically more of a drama sci-fi than an action film. Like, I feel like the action is almost there because it has to be. And to me, I always felt that the story of the trilogy was complete. There wasn't, and I like that the movie basically says Neo has done what he needed to do for us, and now we're going to do something for him. We're going to reunite him with Trinity, and then Trinity becomes she's the one who almost wants to fight. She's the one who wants to change the Matrix. She's the one that maybe will in the future create something new, or maybe expand IO or whatever. We don't know. Interestingly, you guys have mentioned sequels. Lana Wachowski has basically said that she's done and she's not doing more. This was said by Keanu in interviews.
Yes, no, this has come out.
Yeah, she doesn't really do interviews for some reason. I mean, she's a very private person, I suppose. And
I got to meet her once. It was cool.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
God,
That's
that sounds
awesome.
awesome. Oh, yeah. I think Kristen told me about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
God, I would love to meet her. She's great.
They're lovely.
Go
ahead.
And I do think the movie, to me, feels almost as sort of an open-ended conclusion to what The Matrix is. It's kind of reaffirming its themes and its ideas, and it's kind of, at the same time, telling you where the story went and where the story is going, and also maybe kind of telling you not to worry about it too much. Like, it's almost saying it's going to be okay. Neo did this. The future is going towards a more positive direction, but it is an endless struggle. It doesn't just, it's not a messiah story as the trilogy might make you think. Like, it's not, oh, he did this and now we're all safe and free and everything's going to be fine forever. That's not how things work in the real world. But there is hope. With love, we can improve the world and that kind of stuff. It's open-ended, and I don't know there might be more Matrix movies. I don't know if they will be directly sequels to this. I don't know if Keanu Reeves comes back without Lana Wachowski, and I don't know if Carrie-Anne Moss comes back without Lana Wachowski. So we'll see what happens, but
yeah,
I think there's strong loyalty to her with those directors.
Yeah.
With the actors, of course. But I just want to jump on one thing, Hugo. This one is Hugo is going to appreciate it. It felt like Evangelion 3.0 plus one twice upon time. That's when I finished this. I felt the same exact way. I've seen this story now for most of my life. It is open-ended, but you're kind of just left to worry. And these characters are now on a path that is brighter than what they were doing before, but still not the best, probably.
Mm-hmm. I will see what happens.
Yeah.
I do like how at the end, instead of saying, "Oh, we're getting rid of the Matrix," he's just like, "Yeah, we got some changes to make." He's not saying, the Matrix needs to be gone. There's that good middle ground that's came with this movie ever since third one, where there's peace, but people aren't wanting to leave the Matrix. So a little bit, some changes are needed to make them not so imprisoned either.
That's what I was gonna ask, because that is still the goal, right? The goal is ultimately to get everyone unhooked from the Matrix, but they have to do it in the means of that doesn't break the prosperity between the robots and them.
I don't know if that is the goal. I think the goal is just peace and choice and letting people choose whether they want to be in the Matrix or not. And in the same way as programs can kind of choose whether they want to be in the digital world or in the real world now. It's kind of ideally would go back and forth, and you can see the humans are being able to create new sources of energy. They have the new technology that creates the sky and humidity and recreating nature, and so maybe they will be able to, working together, create a world where the machines don't need to enslave humanity in order to survive. That I think ideally that's where it would go. But I don't know. I kind of feel it would almost work better if they did like crazy lore comic books that are set 1,000 years after,
I
rather
would
than going back to cinema.
personally really like us to go do Animatrix 2.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what
yeah.
I would
That'd
personally
be-
like to see is
Yeah.
That'd be
give
fantastic.
like 10 anime directors a 20-minute thing to just make a Matrix story in and
Oh, yeah.
see what you come up with. I think you could do some real fun stuff with that.
For
Mhm.
sure.
If this story had to continue and all that kind of thing.
New video
So
games.
kind of going
please.
back to what? Sorry, go ahead.
Say new video
Okay.
games, please.
Yeah, a new video game would be nice. But going back to what Hugo said, I don't know. I also don't think that's like the ultimate end game where you just want to stop the Matrix forever. But definitely just to have it be the plan was peace, right? So a lot of people, they were I forget who it was, but somebody said earlier in the movie that people don't want to leave the Matrix; they want to stage act in, and I think that's what they're trying to do is just make sure the people who want to stay in the Matrix are doing so with more control than rather than being a prisoner. So that's what I thought. My thought about it.
I would definitely have to. I think I agree with that as well. Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Ultimately, I think, and this is, I'm going to go ahead and read a quote from Lana. This is the quote that I've heard throughout this entire period, but
Mhm.
this is an abridged version of it. It is what this movie is essentially about to them, which is my dad died, then my mom died, all in one night. I was crying and I couldn't sleep. And my brain exploded this whole story. It was immediately comforting to know that these two characters are alive again. So ultimately, her coming to terms of bringing these characters for herself, I find to me is the greatest reason why this movie exists in the first place. Just to having those comforts back and having people in the medium in which you could bring people back.
And I think that works for this whole way of what the Matrix is as a cinema experience.
Yeah.
Is when the first question I asked is our history of the Matrix, and we all had these really fun stories, fond memories of it.
Yeah.
So there's comfort in that. There's comfort in her being able to have those characters and go through that. So I think if that's the reason why this movie was made, that's an amazing reason.
Nostalgia so nostalgia can be a very powerful tool and just a good way of recovering from a trauma. Is just that nostalgia is a beautiful thing, and I think that's what kind of went into this.
I definitely have to agree with that.
It's also, yeah, thanks, Mario, for bringing up that quote. I think it's from an interview that she did. It's like the only interview that she did. It was for this festival in Berlin, and I watched the whole interview, and you can tell everyone working on this is doing it out of love for the series, for the characters, and all that. And I've seen a lot of things online with people saying, "Oh, she intentionally made a terrible movie so she could kill the franchise," and she's telling fans that they shouldn't be fans, and she's intentionally making the action bad. The movie is clearly very in love with The Matrix as both a cultural thing and as something that they created, and in love, I think, with the fans who like it for the right reasons. I think it is telling some of the fans who adopted it for all the red pill people who unfortunately did things with it, that it's basically telling them to fuck off. But I think it's just not. I think it's kind of irresponsible to put out there the idea that they would make a movie intentionally to kill the franchise or make it bad intentionally or just want to be against fans. That's not really what it is to me.
If they wanted to ruin the careers, they could have stopped making movies after Jupiter's Ascending, but they
exactly.
didn't.
Yeah, exactly. They did Jupiter Ascending, and they're still working.
And that movie's awesome and bad. It's so good.
It's so good and terrible. Yeah,
I love it.
It's a wonderful, awful, beautiful, awful time.
Yeah,
so good.
I love it. It sucks. But I think if you didn't like the movie, that's fine. I think I understand why a lot of people didn't like the movie, but I just wish people wouldn't go a step further and try to speculate what the creators think of it, because I generally think people who create things should be admired, even when they fail. And I think they do it out of love for what they do, because otherwise, why would you put yourself out there in that way. So I don't know. I think it's always good to criticize the art without necessarily having to attack the artist.
I definitely have to agree with that. That was an amazing point. And with it, I truly think even just watching this film, you can feel the love that was put into this by the actors and by the directing and the choices and all that. This doesn't feel like a movie that was just, let's throw Matrix idea, buzzwords at a wall and see what sticks and go from there.
There was a lot of thought put into it. Yeah.
There's a through line and there was a great story throughout it. Does it get weird in some places? Yeah, The Matrix always has been weird. Is the action not really there? Yes. But you had 3 amazing action films. If you want to have one that is pure talking and philosophy and all that, that's fine. That's a great thing. And with that, that brings us to a listener question. But before we do that listener question, we got to do a little bit of an ad read real quick. Let me just pull that up. All right. This episode is brought to you by Buzzsprout. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, which is why we partnered up with Buzzsprout to help you succeed. Buzzsprout gives your show listed on every major podcast platform. Join over hundreds of thousands of podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. If you're looking for a great podcast website, audio players that can drop onto other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening to your content, tools to promote your episodes, and more, follow the link in the description below. Let Buzzsprout know we sent you and get you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up to a play plan and help support our show. Now, back to the show. All right. Now we just gotta pull up Christian's. All right. Rich, you got that pulled up?
Yeah, I got it pulled up. Just let me know when you're ready.
We're ready. Cool. Hit us.
Hello, Penultimate Conquest crew. This is Christian here. First of all, Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you're enjoying. God bless. Second of all, question for the gang, for the show. Do you think The Matrix Resurrections will get a sequel? Sounds easy enough to answer, right? Wrong. So many other questions spawn out from this one question here, right? Do Lana and or Lily return to write/direct? Do Neo and Trinity return for a sequel? What do we see? You know? Do we get a new trilogy? Are we going to get people finally coming out of the Matrix? Will machines, people, and sentience coexist? Is that what we're headed towards? Yeah, I don't know. So many things to think about here about where we go with that, kind of open ending. So what do you guys think? Will we get some more Matrix sequels? Thank you. Also, shout out Hugo.
All right.
Hello,
I got
Penultimate Conquest.
Did everybody catch up? I just want to make sure.
Yeah. We've got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be
all right.
hornier, to be honest.
I thought it would be hornier too.
Kind of
I was expecting it to be about Keanu, I'll be honest. I was expecting it to be a little horny about Keanu.
Here's the honest answer, and I honestly
looks hot in this.
Oh, all right, you need to chill.
Yeah, you were on the ball way ahead of time, Hugo.
Let's see.
You were jacked into that question.
Yeah.
Honestly, if they do another movie, it should be about Bugs. This movie, honestly,
Yes.
The one character that we haven't really talked about is Bugs. Bugs is the best new character.
Should be Bugs.
In this entire film. So if we're gonna have Neo and Trinity, they should only be peripheral characters like Niobe, in my opinion. They should be able to enjoy retirement. I mean, they could still be doing their thing. Obviously, they go to the Matrix every now and then. But as a movie, as someone to follow, Bugs is your main character, and I think that she took a backseat in all this just to service, obviously, all the other things that are happening in the film. Which there's a lot of stuff. She, to me, is the star of if you're going to do anything else going forward. Either it's going to be this emerging conflict between the machines versus the machines and machines versus humans, and what is that leading into? I mean, there's some talk of possible more war. But I love the idea that someone brought up, or I believe even Christian brought up, cat knocked something over, where the humans coming together, maybe that is the end result. And I think that would be far more fascinating of how they're able to exist without the Matrix.
All right. Saj, what about you? Do you think there's going to be a sequel to this? What do you think?
So yeah, we talked about this earlier. I don't think there will be, but if there is, what we've said past 5 minutes is that we hope it's about bugs. That's where I am. Jessica Henwick did a great job with bugs and made a really light character feel more important. And yeah, that's pretty much what I think. If there is going to be another one, it should be about bugs.
All right. I guess for me, it will be. I am quite happy with it ending here. I think the story of the Matrix was done when it re-ended the originals, but I think Resurrections does a great job of completing a story of Trinity and Neo as characters together. Not because the first 3 are just about Neo's journey of the One, Messiah, all that kind of thing, Savior. And this one felt like finally the culmination of he gets his moment, but also it's Trinity's moment that the One maybe is not just a one-person thing, and it is back again. It is a different person, and of course that translates to what's going on through the changes and everything of the directors. I think that's a beautiful story, and I think it's a great story to tell through the medium of the Matrix. There's always been about that with its subplots and everything. So for me, I think we're not going to see another one, but if we did, I have a different answer than everyone. I think we should go into an animatrix style, because I'm the anime guy, and I think giving a couple of directors, especially the ones at the current moment doing anime, do some crazy ass shit with the Matrix, and I'd love to see it. Do a Star Wars Visions type thing on HBO Max. It'd be great. All right.
I could absolutely see some animatrix stuff. I don't think Lana Wachowski would ever do more, but if she did, she might write about bugs. Bugs. Just a small thought. But the scene where Bugs, is kind of lost and going through the motions of her life, and then she sees this old man who's going to jump, but he never falls, and that's what makes her realize that she's in the Matrix and living this fake life. It's kind of a parallel to a story that Lana Wachowski herself has told about her own life when she was young and she was experiencing gender dysphoria. She wasn't coming to terms with her identity. She was going to attempt suicide content warning, suicide. She was going to attempt suicide by jumping in front of a train, which is why the final scene in the original Matrix is that big fight in the train station. But the reason why she didn't is because she looked over and saw this old man who she didn't know, and she didn't have any relationship to him, but just seeing this man see her in the eyes and look at her made her realize that she exists and that her existence is worth it. And that scene where Bugs sees Neo is kind of a nod to that story, which I think is lovely. So if she could ever write something more about Bugs, I think it would be interesting.
Yeah, I definitely.
That's all the stuff that I love that they were
great.
exploring that I loved,
Yeah.
that I found interesting, that is so powerful in this first half. So that's why I would love for those stuff to be reinforced later and more into Bugs' character.
I definitely agree. Bugs was a standout among a movie with a whole bunch of other standouts. Great. Just great all around. And with that, it brings us to our final thoughts. Any last words we want to say on the Matrix, Hugo? Anything else you want to wrap up your thoughts on it?
I have so many thoughts on the Matrix. I don't know. I'll be watching this movie for years, and I think every time I rewatch it, I will appreciate it a little more. I actually might go see it in the cinema finally tomorrow, because I had to watch it because it hadn't released in Italy until a few days ago because it released late. So shout out to Willie Mejia, who gave me his HBO password, and I watched it with a VPN because I couldn't have watched it otherwise. I love that man.
Shout out to Willie. We give him a big shout out here.
Everyone loves Willie.
Yeah, he's the best. And
he's the best.
But yeah, I might see it tomorrow again, and I'm going to see it for years. I can't wait to buy the 4K Blu-ray because I don't know. I love this whole series, and I think
I'm definitely getting that one.
Yeah, I think watching them all back to back to back will make them all feel sort of small parts of a whole. Yeah, I loved it. I love it.
Mario, any final thoughts you got for me?
I think going back into watching this one, it's made me want to reevaluate watching 2 and 3 again. It's been a very long time since I've been able to enjoy those films. Definitely am excited to watch this again because I believe it still has some time left on HBO Max, which I think is a fine place to watch it if you don't have access to the theater, especially right now. Everything going on, but when it comes to the films themselves, I always found myself to be a fair weather Matrix person. I think the first Matrix movie blew me away, and that's the one I think about still the most. I'm just happy in my lifetime that I got to be a second great Matrix film. This being a little bit more personal, and I think that to me is what ultimately I'll carry with it going forward. I have obviously 1,000 other things I could talk about this movie, but I have COVID brain, and so it's all blocked right now. So.
All right. Saj, what about you? Any final thoughts on this one?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I've seen this movie probably about like 4 or 5 times now. The first time I saw it, I was so indifferent because it was such a different type of movie. I didn't really have many thoughts, but every single time I've watched it since then, I've had a blast. So I'm like 100% happy that this movie exists, and it's going to be. I'm excited to discover all these little things that they hid in the movie that that you'll notice later on. So yeah, if you haven't watched it, it's definitely worth a go, in my opinion.
I don't see any reason, unless you are just not a Matrix person, to not watch this film. It's on HBO Max. It's an amazing ride, and especially if you are a Matrix person, you gotta go watch this. It is a great conclusion to an amazing story that is still left with just enough questions to make it interesting. It was a fantastic look back and also look forward at the same time into this world, and I thought it did it perfectly. And with that, we get to plugs. Hugo, you got anything you want to plug today?
You can follow me on Twitter at Hugo_Pinay and on Letterboxd. Follow me on Letterboxd. That's more fun, less contentious. Just Hugo.
Are we sure it is? It's Letterboxd.
No, yeah, my Letterboxd is fine. And you can listen to my podcast, Remember the Film. We recently did an episode that I really enjoyed doing on Bong Joon-ho's Memories of Murder, which is a movie I absolutely love. Fantastic. So yeah, you should check that out.
All right, definitely will be. All right, Mario, what you plugging today?
I'm ready to plug this cat because I keep biting me and it hurts. Ow. Oh, okay. Sorry. You can follow me at Point in Progress with my other co-hosts, which of course we talk about video games and movies and all types of fun stuff. We recently did all of our Game of the Year content where I edited all the videos of everyone's selections of their top 5 games that they've played.
Yeah. Definitely want to say it was amazing. The way you guys did that was amazing.
Everyone chose Returnal, right?
No, none of us played Returnal, which was the most funniest bit. Instead, we all played Loop Hero and Final Fantasy. Apparently, it was the big one.
Sure.
I gave shout out to Kenna Bridge of Spirits, but even so. So we have that over there, and I also have another show where I do Marvel stuff called Marvel the MC University, which essentially is a somewhat class of all the old Marvel movies before this current MCU started. So the next movie we're doing, I believe, is Spider-Man 2. So
Ooh.
have to get ready for that one.
Ooh, and perfect timing to be doing that one with No Way Home and everything.
I know. So hopefully we'll get through that. I think we're actually going to do No Way Home as like the last episode if there's no more movies after Mobius. So we'll see how that goes.
If Morbius ever comes out,
But then the Doctor Strange trailer showed stuff, and I'm like, oh god, we're gonna be doing this forever.
we're stuck here forever. It is the Matrix.
Morbius is gonna end all movies.
Yes.
It's just gonna come out, and it's just gonna. People are just gonna say, "Okay, we're not watching movies anymore." Thanks.
That's it, folks. We had a good run. It's been 60 years we've been doing this. It's over. Pack up the bags, Hollywood.
Yeah.
All right, Saz, what are you plugging today?
Just Sergeant SquarePants, pretty much anywhere. I don't have any like streaming or anything like that, but just on Instagram, Twitter, PSN, Xbox, all the same. Sergeant SquarePants.
All right, and I'm just gonna be plugging my Twitter, Ryan the Lion 3055. Follow me for any hot takes and wherever the hell I am on the internet that week. It could be here, could be at other places, shows. Who really knows? And with that, I'd like to thank you for listening, taking the red pill, and spending the hour with us to talk about the Matrix. Thank you. Have a good night.